What do you call an empty whiskey glass? Drunk. That kind of humor and so much more as we talk Grayson Whiskey on this episode of Texas Whiskey.
Stretch calling that humor.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Texas Whiskey. My name is Jimmy Hayes Nelson, a.k.a. Coach Jimmy. I will be your host as we go down this journey together today. And to my right, as always, is the doctor himself, the whiskey man, Dr. Nico Martini. How are you, sir?
Hello, Jimmy. How
Happy
are you?
holidays.
Happy holidays. This is we're recording this Thanksgiving week. I don't know when it's going to air.
Oh, right.
But this is the week of Turkey Day.
This is which is my favorite holiday.
How?
Oh
Really?
my gosh. Can we go down this road just for a second?
Yeah.
I got asked this the other day,
tangent.
like, Jimmy, so everybody's favorite is Christmas. Two reasons. I think Thanksgiving's the perfect holiday because you have booze, you have food, and you have football. And then my own personal vendetta is my birthday's 2 days after Christmas, and I'm always going to lose to Jesus when it comes to like the birthday competition.
Yes.
So I'm put my vote with Thanksgiving.
Okay. No,
Yours?
That's solid. What's my favorite holiday?
Yeah.
Probably Christmas.
Yeah, I'd see. Very traditional.
Yeah, whatever.
So we're very excited. This episode we've been waiting for a while because we get to talk about Grayson. As you see Nico holding there. And we have a very special guest, Mr. Brandon Davis, with us as well. Hey, man, what's up?
Hey, Jimmy, Nico.
Hello, Brandon.
This may be a very over-familiar episode because we all know each other. So it's not about like, you'll find out all about this. But before we get into Brandon's story, how he and Nico connected and this whole crazy Grayson story, tell us a little bit about what you're pouring there, Nico.
This is Grayson. Grayson is a blended Texas bourbon. This is, I'm sure that a lot of people that are watching this show right now know exactly what Grayson is. They know that this is the whiskey that I've been working on. This is the whiskey that we put out in May. May? Was it May?
May.
May, yes.
And
we released it in May.
then again in...
And now, the reason that we're here and the reason that we're talking about this particular whiskey right now is we are a handful of days away from bottling batch 1B.
1B.
So this, as we will be starting off the show, as we always start off the show drinking a little bit of whiskey, this is Grayson batch 1. This is what we bottled and released.
It smells so familiar. I was there bottling day, and you stick your nose in that, and I'm like, it takes me back to the day.
Yeah, it is the infamous Grayson. We lasted about 2 hours on our internet pre-sale. We lasted about 10 days in retail shops, and it's been gone ever since. I literally bought this for you on the secondary market from somebody who was, sold it for a little bit of a profit. And so, that's kind of where we're at with this thing now.
Well, tell me a little bit about the whiskey itself, and then let's back up and find out how this whole thing came to be as well.
Sure. So totally. So when we started off talking about this, talking about just sort of what we were going to do and what the plan would become, I couldn't get it out of my head that I wanted to work with more than one distillery. And so there's a lot of people that will go to a distiller and buy some whiskey and then take it and put it under their own label, and here you go. And so you've got things like Sweeten's Cove that the Manning brothers went Marianne picked some bottles, and now they labeled 15-year-old juice from Dickel Sweeten's Cove, and it's just 15-year-old juice from Dickel. So
Just labeled something different.
yeah. Gotcha. So kind of knowing that, we wanted to do something a little bit more interesting, and so we came up with the idea of doing a Texas blended bourbon.
Awesome.
And so we work with Lone Elm, we work with Balcones, and we work with Iron Root. Iron Root is our primary partner. They're the ones who Jonathan Licorice put this magic together.
That's awesome.
And so he's the head blender there. As soon as that became the idea, we went to Iron Root and we asked them if they would be interested in being a part of it. They said, yeah, man, that sounds fun. So once they got on board, it was just kind of like, okay, let's figure out what we want this blend to be. We have the best blenders in the state that are on our team, and let's kind of go from there.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Well, cheers as we get started. So, Brandon, I want to go, let's back up on this story just a bit.
Sure.
And give us a little bit of your background before you got into this world, because there was a wine project, right?
Sure. Yeah. So not to talk for too long about what I do, but my business partner, Vernon Wells, is an ex-MLB baseball player. And about, I think it was in 2012,
right?
He was playing on the Angels with another partner of ours, a guy named Chris Iannetta. They were both injured at the time. And when you're injured and you're still on the active roster, you actually still travel with the team.
Mm-hmm.
So they still get to enjoy the nice meals and
right.
You end up drinking a lot more because you don't have a game the next day.
Right.
So they started a brand. They're like, let's start a wine brand, which is like the most famous last words of anybody who has a little bit of money that wants to lose all of their money. Side note, the best advice I was ever given when was talking to some mentors in the wine industry was just get out because you're going to spend a large fortune to make a small one.
Wow.
So they started this little passion project called Jack, J-A-C-K, back in 2012. And my kind of stubbornness decided that maybe we should make a business out of this. It was a very highly sought after wine. It was very good. And we could sell it. And so in 2012, we had 2 varietals of wine. We now have since acquired another brand from a lady who's kind of a pioneer in the wine industry in Napa Valley, purchased a vineyard, and have gone from 2 varietals in Jack up to 6, plus another 3 varietals in a brand that we acquired, and have 30 acres of fruit that we own.
So this one went much better than what most people do when they go into this.
It will, and it's one of those things. It's a long play, and so
Sure.
we're still on the road to success and have a very long way there. But what we found, kind of during this whole adventure, was that like the spirits and wine industry are something that we become passionate about.
Yeah.
It's artwork, and artwork is unique to the individual who's making it, and unique to the group that's behind it. And so it's really fun to put out something that you're passionate about because. I told Nico this, and I think that Grayson is a true example of it. Only put stuff in a bottle that I want to drink.
Yeah, absolutely right.
I'm not gonna if I'm gonna go to a restaurant and my wine or my whiskey's on the list, I'm gonna order it because I have to because I want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there's a bunch of stuff and everything kind of in between. And this whiskey project started, and I'm sure we'll get into that shortly.
Yeah.
But
and so when the transition with you, especially with you and Vernon, talked about went really well with and this was just in brief conversations at the launch party and whatnot. Was all that was based in California, correct?
Correct.
And so when it came to doing something here in the state, Vernon's from here also. Did this started as a potential brandy project? Am I correct?
It started as a brandy project,
and you wanted to do something in the state, right? As opposed, it was. Am I following that?
No.
It was brandy in California. Yeah. So we still haven't brought it back to Texas yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
So we started with we own grapes,
right?
What spirit is made with grapes, and so it's brandy.
Smart.
And what we've found very quickly that good brandy's aged brandy. Aged brandy is hard to come by and it's very expensive. There is a really cool distillery up in Ukiah, California, which was started by, which I guess had roots to Jermaine Robin, who's a very well-known master distiller of cognac.
Okay.
And we went down that path and it was like, yeah, we can make brandy, sure. But we're not going to sell 2-year-old brandy. And on top of that, people, kind of to the business side of things, people don't buy a bottle of brandy a week or a month or a year.
It kind of sits up there and it gets sipped on occasionally as a dessert thing,
sure.
Special occasions, holidays, et cetera, right? Yeah.
And like the big guys that do it well, like Hennessy. I mean, Hennessy makes good cognac.
Yeah.
And, why try and break it? So that was like 4 or 5 years ago. And then we took a break because it was like, maybe we should see how interested we are in the alcohol world before we really.
So that never got launched. It just kind of discussed, put on a back shelf.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where do we go from there to bringing things back to the state?
So this is how I met Nico.
Well, that's good because that's my next question.
We were in a dark alley. In downtown Dallas on a Monday night.
Do you still have that hat?
No.
This will be awesome when
I had to use that as payment for the guy.
when this gets made into a movie, this scene's going to be awesome. The opening scene in this dark alleyway.
Yeah.
Bartering with hats.
You found your pants, right?
I did.
Okay,
awesome.
They don't fit anymore, but I found them.
And so anyway, I met Nico through one of my best friends, a guy named Case Phillips, who met Nico at a marketing networking event.
Okay. Nico's good at that networking stuff.
He's very good at it. He is
Connector extraordinaire.
Then, yeah.
Right.
I I'd been talking to Case kind of about the Spirits project. His company has helped us in a lot of the branding of some of the other businesses that we have, some of the marketing behind the two wine brands. And so when he met Nico, and I don't know how the conversation, manifested itself into me making whiskey, but we had started talking to another distillery in Fort Worth after that brandy project. It went a little bit down the path, and then they were acquired by a large brand, and so they were unable to make the project for this.
But that was here. So by that point, we had decided in California,
yes,
we're going to maybe do brandy in Texas.
Correct.
Talking to a distillery, that kind of went left.
Yes.
This conversation happens. You should know my friend Nico.
Yeah. So so Case we went to lunch together.
Yeah.
Nico was very, very hard hitting about, if you don't have a story, this isn't going to work. It's like, dude, we got a story.
Speaking my language now. I know exactly. Yep.
But what was super interesting was exactly what he had said earlier about the Manning brothers.
Right.
Anybody can go buy a barrel and stick that juice in a bottle and put your label on it. And if somebody's going to ask you what's in it, well, he's just going to say Dickel 15-year-old, whatever.
Right.
For us, he was like, we got to do something that's different and something that hasn't been done before and something that's going to allow the consumer and the whiskey people to want to try it.
So real quick, before we go further, I got a question. I don't think I've asked you this question before.
Go ahead.
So had this been obviously storytelling, you and I come from the same theater background, so we think everything should have a story. Yeah. It should. Everything should have a story, kids. Yeah. But is this something you had thought about before in the midst of this conversation, did this all hit you you were super clear on where this should go? Or is this something that you had been thinking of, but the opportunity hadn't been there yet? Does that make sense?
It was something that kind of came through the conversation. Yeah.
Gotcha. Honestly. So the clarity came because of this conversation. No, it wasn't something you had been mulling. You know what there should be.
No.
X, Y. Okay.
It was very much the idea of. I mean, honestly, it was okay. Well, if we can't get it from there, who else could we get it from? Okay, they'd be cool. Well, they'd be cool. Man, I don't know. It's like, okay, well, do we just want to? If we just partner with them, are they going to stay with us forever? Like, are we going to be able to keep doing this? Okay, well, maybe not them. What about them? And then it just sort of turned into I don't want to work with one. Like, I just don't want to work with one.
Right.
I want to find a way that we have options and we have the ability to. And then once it was like, let's do a blend. I immediately called Robert up at Iron Root and was like, hey, here's a wacky idea. Are you in? Because I think they're the best blenders in the state.
Right.
Pretty handily. And, at that point I had met everybody.
Right.
And so, I'm very familiar with the products that are coming out of this state. And I was like, man, if we can get Iron Root to say yes, then not only are they fantastic, everybody loves them.
Yeah.
Loves them.
And so Brandon,
so hard.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, because they became, it was right about the time they become the darlings of the state. And the timing was good on that as well.
It was before that.
So it was even before the awards and best bourbon and
beginning of 2019.
Okay.
So we had a weird about 2 years, I would say. Mm-hmm. I meet Nico. We have lunch together twice. Mm-hmm. Nico has a child. Right? This was when your second was born.
Yeah, Declan was coming.
But between the time that we met and the time that he had a baby, we went up to Iron Root because he was like, I want to introduce you to a bunch of people and then we can choose who the best partner would be.
Let's start with Iron Root.
Literally within the first 5 minutes. It's like, it's not about the quality is there. It's about the people that you work with.
Oh my gosh. And that family is amazing. Like every time I've ever been around them, it's just like, it's this immediate energy, no matter who you are. They're rolling in. Like the day I came and helped bottle, maybe I'd met one of them before, but it was just like, it's like you're friends with them immediately, and it's so real quick backing up when you're having that initial lunch and Nico says something of, this should be a mix. It's like, did you buy in, like with you or the conversations you had with you and Vernon and you guys all talked about this? Was it, that makes sense, the blended idea? Because we've talked about this, Nico. There are people that the terms blended whiskey has differing, their response to that. So, when that first was brought up, was it everybody on board or was there a bit of, no, we just want one?
So this is my first foray into spirits. And so in wine, blending is very common. Blending varietals are very common. And like advertising that blend is common. So I didn't ever see it as a bad thing. what I thought was particularly interesting was the idea of working with multiple people. And so I find that when a group or somebody doesn't like something, it's particularly because they've never been exposed to something that they've actually loved. So in a blend, it's like, yeah, like I don't love the idea of a blend of a bunch of different things together. Well, you should try it first. And so, and then on top of that, it was, well, this hasn't been done before. This is the first of its kind in the state.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, there's very few of those in Kentucky as well.
Sure.
So why not try it and see what happens?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And if it does, great. And it did.
And another reason I think it probably works so well here is a theme that's come back on the show is this idea of Texas whiskey being very experimental. It isn't, we just do this. And whether it's talking to when we've had Balcones in here, when we've had Iron Root and everything, it seems like the spirit across the state is, I don't know, let's try it because we don't have 200 years of history that says you can only do it this way.
It's interesting because the people that bought this, the people that sold it out, they are Iron Root fans, they are Lone Elm fans, and they are Balcones fans.
Right.
And I think you're absolutely right. The reason that they were willing to do it was because they're already into interesting whiskey.
Yeah.
They're the ones who've moved beyond. Not moved beyond. They're the ones who aren't solely locked into what's coming out of Buffalo Trace.
Right.
What's coming out of Willet. Like they're the ones who've sort of gotten into Texas whiskey. They're willing to kind of put their opinions aside and kind of experience it for what it is.
And I think that's really an interesting point Nico makes and a question you bring up because the industry of Texas whiskey is so young. Mm-hmm. We have such a huge opportunity. And I don't just say we as in Nico, myself, Grayson, you, but it's everybody in the state to make a splash into this big whiskey region, right?
Yeah.
Think of the whiskey regions in the States, in the United States.
Right.
I mean, the two you think of are Kentucky and Tennessee.
Yeah.
So why not Texas? And so now, to be able to do something like this and for people to recognize it as a great product done by great distillers and brands that came together, I think shows the people who have been doing it for 200, 300, 400 years that, hell, there's something good coming out of it.
Yeah. So going back, so this is 2019. We talk about it's right before kind of the peak of Iron Root, right? What I find really interesting about the 3 distilleries you guys have chosen, right? You have who's kind of become like the leader as far as awards and recognition and what they're doing in the state, the best blenders, as you said, in Iron Root. You have Lone Elm, which is a smaller operation here locally, maybe not as well known. And then you have Balcones, which is kind of the big dog in the state. So it's really interesting.
Texas whiskey.
The first Texas whiskey. Mm-hmm. So I guess once y'all had this conversation at Iron Root, was it, let's go talk to Balcones? Like, was there any apprehension of like, let's go talk to maybe the biggest distiller in one of the biggest distilleries in the state and let's see if they're open to this?
I mean, immediately, like the conversation began once Iron Root came on board. Then the conversation was, okay, what do y'all like to drink? Yeah. Like, let's start there. What do you want to make?
Right.
First of all.
And this is a conversation between you guys as far as Brandon, Vernon, the whole team there.
We tasted through, I can't even tell you the number of barrels of Iron Root that allowed them to get an idea of where our palates kind of live.
And that was a fun day or two.
It was a long day. And it was exhausting.
So we need to record that day. Because how'd the day go? Don't remember. I think it went really well.
Yeah. And then we ended up back in Dallas.
Yeah. Man, sometimes our job is really, really difficult.
It's like this show every week for me.
You're not allowed at Choctaw anymore, right?
I know. I'm still not allowed. That's because of the pants.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Found them there.
So you're tasting at Iron Root to figure out what's the palate, what are we looking for, to see what else would complement as far as a blending thing, and then you identified the potential distilleries to partner with outside of that. Am I following that right?
We tossed out some ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, it was along the lines of. I mean, we tried more than just Lone Elm and Balcones.
Of course.
And we blended them using the bottles that we would just buy at the liquor store or stuff that they had.
Yeah. So Jonathan starts running to the liquor store, grabbing, and then making little blends. And the one that we wound up settling on wound up having Lone Elm in it.
Wow, okay.
And so, and Balcones.
Right.
And, at some point, I mean, I feel like I probably said something along the lines of, if we could get Balcones in there, that would be great because they sort of are very, very distinct, but very Texan, and they're the first ones. So I definitely want us to try with Balcones. So they were sort of in the blends initially. So yeah.
And how was that conversation initially? Like with them, were they pretty, again, I think of them as very experimental. They do so many, you and I were just having this conversation about single malts and bourbon and stuff before the show. What I've always dug about Balcones is they don't just go in one direction. Like they do a lot of things. And so were they pretty open to this idea at the beginning? Or?
Oh yeah, they're down.
Yeah.
They're totally down. I mean, I feel like even talking to Jared about the book, for the book, he was telling me like the thing that he hopes he can do one day more than anything is to be given the keys to somebody else's distillery and just go and start tasting stuff and start messing around and making his own blends. And he's all into that. Like that's his jam.
So as you're going through this, and we'll get to the name in this, I want to, so you've referenced the Manning brothers a couple times now. I'm curious with you and Vernon working with this, was there ever a play that, because this, you wouldn't know this is like a celebrity whiskey. You don't necessarily see Vernon's name on it or anything like that. Is that how that's always wanted to be? Because that's how it was with the wine. It wasn't necessarily a look, this is Vernon's whiskey or Vernon's wine project, but he just wanted to put something quality, be a part of making something quality, not so much having his name all over it.
That's correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I think, one of the things when we started building a business around our wine brand is there's so many people that lean on the celebrity status.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
There's so few people at that price point who really care who owns it.
Yeah.
It's about what's in the bottle, not necessarily the people that own it. The people that own it come secondary. And so, just referring to wine again, we are not a baseball owned wine brand. We are a wine brand that happens to be owned by baseball players.
I love that, because I think now when something is so overtly it's so-and-so celebrities, you almost think it's going to be an inferior product. And that's maybe completely unfair. But I love the fact that that's not what this is, even on the there's no way to know what are the three distilleries labeled are they on the label at all? Like if somebody came along, would they know the three?
No, they're not on the label. We're going to be adding a QR code so that it's going to dump you into. So the idea is, okay, so step back. This is batch 1.
Yep.
Okay. We are bottling batch 1B. Here in about a week.
Sure.
Batch 1B will be for sale some 10th, 11th, 12th or so of December, somewhere around there. It should be in stores. We'll do some sort of an online pre-sale.
Perfect for Christmas.
Perfect for Christmas.
Nico's favorite holiday, if you didn't know. It's rare. It's his favorite one.
Absolutely.
And Jimmy's birthday.
You could buy me a bottle for my birthday. I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely. So with that, knowing that the way that we're going to move forward with this, batch 1 and batch 1B, which I did bring,
the secret bottle here,
secret bottle, the unlabeled bottle, because it is not it's not bottled yet. So this is the same distilleries.
Right.
It is Lone Elm, Balcones, and Iron Root.
Sure.
And going into it, the intention was let's get it as close as you can. You can't, because the Lone Elm that is in this, there's some Lone Elm in here that's 7 years old. Mm-hmm. There's not any 7-year-old Lone Elm in this.
Right.
For instance, the barrels.
You can only blend what you have.
Right.
It's not like you can just recreate something that was 7 years old with something that was 3 or 4 or whatever. Right.
The 2 barrels that we got from Balcones, if you know anything about single barrel pigs, you're very aware that single barrels can taste very different. Sure. The 2 barrels we got from Balcones, they're not the same as the ones that are in here.
Right.
They were probably from the same general area of the warehouse, but who knows? Like
sure.
we have what we have, and so it's going to be what it is. This tastes different than that.
Yeah.
And so with that, knowing as we move forward, even if we're using the same ratios and we're using the same distilleries, each one of these things is going to be a little bit unique. So we're going to switch to a QR code on the back, and you will be able to scan it, and we'll take you to the website where it will describe that batch.
Oh, I love that.
And then you can look at all of the other batches if you want to.
Sure.
But like every individual one, you're going to be sent to the information about that one.
But I love the fact that it's not the same, because I feel like when this isn't McDonald's, right? It isn't like we're trying to create the same thing. I feel like that's what's so interesting about this. And obviously going back to your background in wine and stuff, like each year is a little, because there's so many variety. I mean, there's so many variables about weather and aging and all the things that go into it. I think that makes it great. But, I love the fact that what this has become, and I've heard you say this many, many times, it literally is a celebration of Texas whiskey. And so, these first 2 batches are the same 3 distilleries, but moving
Batch 2 won't
forward,
be.
right. So moving forward, there can be other distilleries. And so it's always this idea of a blend. Let's celebrate Texas whiskey, which I love that because, the fact that Nico, I've heard you say over and over again, like this is the year where, Texas whiskey is taking off, and to have a product that literally celebrates what's been going on around here for 15 years I think it's really exciting.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
We're pretty happy with it. Do you want to try the new one?
Yes.
I think okay. So here goes the deal. This Brandon, if you could pass that over, please. This is batch 1B.
1B.
So we went in
Same 3 distilleries.
Same 3 distilleries.
Was there ever a thought to
Sir?
switch that up now, or was it? We want to go ahead and
No, we always intended for, and that's why we're calling it B and not batch 2. Just because when we start off a batch in a year, I think each year is going to have a new batch number.
Sure.
So what we come out with in March will be batch 2.
Gotcha.
And so why we called it batch 1B is we have it's the same partner distilleries. It's the same idea. But inherently with the different types of whiskey is you're going to get different flavor. Like there's some in let's compare. Like by all means, let's take a. I mean, what do y'all get out of Grayson batch 1? Let's start there. Because to me, it's really like it's a whole bunch of it's pancakes drenched in syrup.
Yeah.
It's not like syrup. It's pancakes with syrup, and like there's a butteriness to it as well. That's kind of got its own. There's a sweetness to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is an unfair question now because I smelled that before we started, and it's a much more subdued sweetness. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like it is. It's the entire palate. It's not just the syrup and so it's sweet, but it's not overbearing. It's an entire plate full of French toast, I guess. Compared to. And again, I'm skewed now because we were sniffing on this before we jumped on.
The point of it is just to kind of have a different idea for each one of them.
And this one's like mapley fantastic. I can't wait to taste this. But yes, go ahead.
I think what's really fun, and again, I mean, not to talk about wine too much, but I've done these things. They're called vertical tastings, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll taste every vintage of a Cabernet that we make, from the first vintage to the current vintage, side by side. And they just taste different, right? Yep. There's like different, the blend's a little bit different, but the factors, the variables that go into making wine, whether it's the weather or it's the fruit conditions or it's the oak that we put on it, it could be different in the aging process. For this, it's like if you're a collector of whiskey and you have, batch 1, batch 1B, batch 2, batch 2A, 2B, and you can sit them next to each other and they all taste just different enough from each other, but you enjoy them equally. That is success. That is so cool to be able to have that sort of collection of product that a group's making. And
okay, I've never thought about this analogy till right now, but it's almost like sitting down with your favorite band's anthology.
Sure.
And listening to album 1 and how it's the same band, but it's a little different, and how they, evolve and where they go from there, Absolutely. But that literally, it's kind of the same idea.
There's plenty of bands that they had a killer first album and they never got back to it.
Right.
And there's plenty of bands that, man, that third album is the best one easily. They're growing as a brand, they're growing as a band. And it's totally changing. I mean, like we had this conversation about Tawakero.
Yeah.
Like, and you have this conversation with Justin, he'll tell you the same damn thing. Like, taste 5-year-old Tawakero. Now taste 3-year-old Tawakero, and it is substantially better.
Different, yeah.
He knows, like he has a different point of view. Yeah. You have a different you have a different knowledge base going into the making.
Well, that's what you hope. Whiskey. The more you do things in the trial and error, that you just get better at what you do.
It is single, other than lumping all Texas whiskey together as if it was just one bottle. Other than that, it is my single biggest source of frustration when I'm talking to people about Texas whiskey, because they had a bottle 5 years ago and they didn't like it.
Right.
like, dude, no, buy something brand stinking new,
Right.
because everybody's
and 5
much
years
better
ago,
at what
from
they're
which
doing.
distillery, right? It is so varied.
Sure, but and you know, the fact is that distillery is making a lot better product now,
Right.
5 years later.
Sure.
And you may end up not even liking that
And
distillery.
some of it better too is like maybe not like just different.
Subjective.
Yeah.
And that's what this is. Like this isn't necessarily better than that. It's different. And
Well,
it's
and then it comes down to personal profile.
100%. And people
like,
aren't
what
gonna
do
like
you
everything.
like, right?
Yeah.
Y'all went through that process. This exists because you guys sat and tasted through lots of stuff. And like you said earlier, I want to bottle what I like to drink. Sure. So this really is a celebration of what the two of you and everybody that was involved was like, this is kind of what we're jamming on right now, which might not be but I will say this. So we take this bottle down to the Texas Whiskey Festival, right?
Yep.
It's Nico's Secret Backpack Whiskey.
As you
And
do.
what was
I was
so
there.
cool?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
I
yeah,
was-
yeah,
he
right,
was
right.
there.
Oh,
I
yeah,
was
because
sick,
because
but
I
I was
still
there.
Sick, but you were
because I
there.
still have that. Speaking of, I have a picture that looks like we're on a heist in that car.
Nice.
But just to reference while we were down there, and this might have been right after you left. There was one afternoon when Nico and I were walking around, and I keep hearing like, "Hey, you got stuff in the backpack?" And these are people in the industry, right? Yeah. These are people from distilleries, super respected and stuff. And I've never seen, so you know they're not going to bullshit you. Like the initial reaction when something hit their lips, you can't fake that expression.
No.
And over and over and over again, it was like, damn. It was just, I was excited for you guys to watch. And we had just started this process. Like I'm new to the whole game, but I was so excited to see the reaction of this thing and the buzz that it already got inside the industry, right? It would be like other musicians listening to a new band and be like,
Knowing you got a hit there.
yeah, it's not so much
totally.
what did the public think. It's like, oh, what do the other musicians think? Or what do these other distilleries think? And I thought that was super exciting for you guys.
And and you know what? Like it opened up so many people's eyes to the idea of doing this and like working with us.
Right.
You know, the conversation is now a lot easier to have with distilleries where it's like, hey, you know, batch 2, you know, are you interested in being involved? And yeah, sure. And it's like awesome. And then we just get to go drink a bunch of awesome single barrel stuff.
Yeah.
And like, you know, if they're interested and they want to move forward with it, like it's a conversation. If they're not, like now we have new friends and
That's literally what I was
new
going to ask. I'm
things
like,
and,
have you gotten interest for people that say, hey, the next one, just keep me in mind, bro.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
I imagine.
Yeah, there
because
were-
how fast did you say that batch 1 went?
It was the absolute perfect storm.
Right.
So the selling of this, there was a whiskey club event the weekend before we went on sale. And at the whiskey club, they were able to taste it and they were able to buy bottles. And so they technically were able to buy the first bottles of them before the online presale.
Right.
However, it was because they were already up there, and Robert was like, "Do you want them to taste it?" And so they did. And it's a very, very big, active Facebook whiskey club.
Yeah.
So, whole bunch of people tasted it, loved it, bought bottles. Whole bunch of people didn't. You can only buy 2 bottles per trip to a distillery, and so they wound up not choosing to buy that one, but they tasted it and they really liked it. Everybody goes back home to their Facebook group and just blows it up. And it's like, oh my God, it's so good. Y'all got to try this, blah, blah, blah.
Word of mouth
goes on
kicks
sale
ass, right?
on Tuesday.
Word of mouth inside of like the right target market, right?
Yep.
You have a bunch of people that
Yep.
know their whiskey and maybe a little snobbish about it. And if you have people across, again, it goes back to this same thing where the people inside the industry are raving about this.
And it just blew up. And then so we wound up having half of the whiskey was available at the distillery.
Yep.
It sold out in less than 2 hours on the online presale. In the middle of once it was done, word got out that it sold out within 2 hours. So when it hit distribution, like 4 days later,
It was like searching for Easter eggs, man.
Yeah,
I remember that. Everybody was looking everywhere.
it was
and
basically
yeah.
the hunt was on. And so for all intents and purposes, within 1 week, the whiskey was gone.
So with batch 1B, is this going to be about the same amount as the first one
Yes.
as far as availability?
Yes.
And so whenever this airs, what are people's best bet on ways to make sure that they don't miss out on this round?
Go to the Grayson website and sign up for our newsletter. That's first and foremost. You can go to the Iron Root website and sign up for their newsletter. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. You know, you'll get the information. We will be very, very vocal and active when it is time everybody will know when the online presale is, and then beyond that, I don't know. Type fast. Log in onto like 3 different devices and hope. I feel like it's back in the day when I'm like trying to buy Pearl Jam tickets. I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like camp out. I don't know where.
I just want to give people like at least a strategy here.
Yeah.
You know, like
yeah, totally.
I think there's going to be. We are allocating more into specs and other liquor stores this time around than we had before to help us kind of continue to drive.
Yeah, because I felt like if you weren't at the bottling or you didn't go up to Iron Root, it was good luck, buddy, last time. And so, I mean, obviously that was kind of fun because I remember popping around to the places and I had a bottle, right? Because I went to go to the bottling and, it was fun to help label and be a part of that whole process. But I would pop in all the time. She's like, oh, can I find one here? Can I find one there? So
can we discuss
1B?
Yes. I want to know what you're getting out of this.
It's fantastic.
it's
like we said
different.
before, like to me, this is the syrup on top of the pancakes as opposed to the pancakes.
Nice. Right on. Yeah. There's a bit of a earthiness to it that is
it's more tannic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It is more tannic.
And I think it has a bit more oak to it, but
which is funny because it's younger whiskey.
It's younger whiskey.
Yeah.
But you don't get, I don't think, so the way I look at any whiskey or wine or beer, like it has like this kind of bell curve, right?
Yeah.
And like to have a complete product, you need to have all aspects, a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Right.
I think what was in the beginning of 1 is now in the middle of 1B. So in the beginning of 1, you kind of get like you get the heat, you get a little bit more of the molasses, and a little bit more of the syrup, and the oak comes a bit later. I think in this one you get the heat and the molasses and the syrup kind of towards the end of the product, and the oak in the beginning.
Yeah.
I don't know if that you guys are tasting what I'm putting down. But.
Absolutely.
No, so for me, it shows up really like on the front end. That's a great way to put it, this bell curve, because that front end is very predominant, but it moves on quickly. It's just like, hey, and then it gets into this really smooth middle part as opposed to, I didn't really feel that way with this one as far as like right when it hits the front end of the set. But I never thought about the journey of a taste of it having this bell curve. That's a great way to describe
You're
that.
gonna think about this when somebody told
every
me about
time I
this,
drink anything now. Yeah.
and eat anything, you're gonna be like, okay, what are the different quadrants of this taste? And it makes you truly, and I think it actually improves your palate because it makes you think about the different experiences through that particular tasting.
Maybe it'll slow down my drinking some too as I'm trying to experience. Damn it.
Not. There's nothing that's,
Guys, I am super excited for you guys. It's just, this is awesome. I think, it's the fact that it's become such a sought after product, not only within whiskey drinkers, but with inside, the industry as well. And that there's so much buzz about it. And the fact that this idea of the longevity, the long play, like you said earlier, of this is going to be years upon years upon years of celebrating Texas whiskey, and to watch the evolution of this. And does it always stay, blended bourbon? Does it become other, because I'm sure you look, is there 3 single malts? Are there 3? I know. Yes, we've met.
I'm doing a blended malt. I'm going to stick something in a finishing barrel.
Right. Yeah.
At some point, we got to mess around. It's going to be great.
But I think that's what's kind of cool about the relationship that Nico and I have like kind of manifested is like, he'll come to me and say, hey, what about this? And I'm like, fuck yes.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Or he'll say, hey, what about that? And I'm like, fuck no.
Or I'll send a message and be like, hey, I have an idea. And I just get no response. I'm like, all right, that's cool.
Right.
That's
one idea at a time, Nico.
Sometimes you say everything when you say nothing. Right?
All right, no, I got you. I hear you. You're probably right.
But there's a lot more to come. I mean, Grayson is one subset of I think our exploration into spirits, Texas and way beyond.
That's exciting. Well, I love the fact that this is probably episode, we keep losing track, 20 something. Like that. But the fact that we actually, finally get to sit here and the show is a celebration of Texas whiskey.
It was
and
time.
It was time. There's no better way
to
talk about the celebration of Texas whiskey than Grayson, which is the celebration of Texas whiskey. So Brandon, thank you for being here. Nico, always, man, this is fun. Until next time. Cheers y'all.
Oh my gosh. There's a earthiness to this one. That's kind of,
it's lovely.